And welcome to the first ever Reading with Robin, Summer's Biggest Book Bash. And my guest, Brit Bennett, I am so excited that you are the number one guest, which is only right, being an instant number one New York Times bestseller. Congratulations. I am so excited. I've been talking about The Vanishing Half since the galley arrived. I know I've annoyed you with my Instagram. Brit, did you know this was a really great book? I mean, I just could not be more excited and thrilled to share it with my audience. As always, I want to thank the audience for being so supportive, and we're raising money for Rhode Island Food Bank and Share Our Strength tonight. And I want to thank my partners, Wicked Tulip Flower Farm, my friends at Wicked Tulips. So go visit them at wickedtulips.com. It's bulb season. And I want to do a proper introduction. Brit was born and raised in Southern California, graduated from Stanford University, and later earned her MFA in fiction at the University of Michigan, where she won Hopwood Award in graduate short fiction, as well as the 2014 Hurston Wright Award for College Writers. A 5 under 5 honoree, her work is featured in The New Yorker, The Paris Review, Jezebel, and more. Her first novel, The Mothers, and if you didn't read The Mothers, read The Mothers, was a New York Times bestseller. And oh my God, just announced her 7-figure deal with, is that embarrassing, with HBO. I just was on Twitter and I'm like, oh my God, breaking news. Congratulations and welcome to Reading with Robin's Book Bash, Brit.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
So like, I mean, how much better? I mean, it's been a really crappy month for a lot of people, but not for
me. I know. And honestly, I feel like I just have no other way to think about it. It was my birthday month.
Yes.
It just like truly have been riding high all month. So I feel so fortunate, surrounded by so much love. I've never been sent so many bottles of champagne or so many flowers in my life. So I feel very fortunate to have so much good news this month.
Oh, wonderful. And you're like 30, so an old lady, and it's finally things are happening for Brit Bennett. At BritBennett.com, follow her on Twitter, on Instagram, like her page. And I always encourage the audience to do that because it's a really nice thing to do. And Brit's a lot of fun to follow on everywhere. I love the Reese Witherspoon stuff today on Instagram. Always funny and just so beloved. And yeah, so did you just, I mean, I know you just tweeted it, but like, how did you find that out? Or were you just obviously involved in the whole process?
I mean, it just closed Friday evening. So I did not think that it was going to be news. I didn't think that like everybody would be finding out so quickly. So I was, had a few days to kind of wrap my mind around it, and it's crazy now that it's come out. But yeah, it was just exciting to have so much interest in the book, and to have so many enthusiastic people want to bring it to the big screen. So I'm very excited that it's HBO. I think they have amazing programming, so I'm really excited to see what it's going to look like on TV.
They do. So it's going to be a series.
Yeah, I think we're talking a limited series, which feels like a good form for a novel because it gives it space to breathe. It doesn't really condense it.
Right.
So yeah, I'm excited to see what comes out of that.
Okay. Well, we won't ask too much more.
I don't know much more, to be honest.
Like, what else can we ask? I mean, because of course, in reading the book, it had such a cinematic feel, and I was taken in from the very first page. I barely put the book down. I could not have loved it more. And it's on literally every list. And I've never said, like, if you're going to read one book all summer, because honestly, you read one book, but if you are going to read one book all summer, you really don't want to miss that. I mean, you just really don't. And it's funny because I read The Galley, which I loaned to my daughter with all my notes. I wrote all these notes in the book, which don't really matter, but like I remember how intensely I was connected to it. Some of them, dare I say, were really meaningful, and I'll send you Instagram messages later. But we did talk about. I was telling Brit that I did post on Facebook, and normally we don't read much, but I said to people, "Would you like to hear a little bit?" And the people have spoken. So Brit will entertain us with a little bit of The Vanishing Half.
Sure. So I'll just read the section I've been reading, which is a little tiny bit from the beginning of the book. And it's just a little bit that will introduce you to the town where the book is set. It was a strange town, Mallard named after the ring-necked ducks living in the rice fields and marshes. A town that, like any other, was more idea than place. The idea arrived to Alphonse de Sor in 1848 as he stood in the sugarcane fields he'd inherited from the father who'd once owned him. The father, now dead, the now freed son, wished to build something on those acres of land that would last for centuries to come. A town for men like him, who would never be accepted as white, but refused to be treated like Negroes, a third place. His mother, rest her soul, had hated his lightness. When he was a boy, she'd shoved him under the sun, begging him to darken. Maybe that's what made him first dream of the town. Lightness, like anything inherited at a great cost, was a lonely gift. He'd married a mulatto even lighter than himself. She was pregnant then with their first child, and he imagined his children's children's children, lighter still, like a cup of coffee steadily diluted with cream, a more perfect Negro, each generation lighter than the one before. Soon others came. Soon idea and place became inseparable, and Mallard carried throughout the rest of St. Landry Parish. Colored people whispered about it, wondered about it. White people couldn't believe it even existed. When St. Catherine's was built in 1938, the diocese sent over a young priest from Dublin who arrived certain that he was lost. Didn't the bishop tell him that Mallard was a colored town? Well, who were these people walking about? Fair and blonde and red-headed, the darkest ones no swarthier than a Greek? Was this who counted for colored in America, who whites wanted to keep separate? Well, how could they ever tell the difference? By the time the Veen twins were born, Alphonse de Sor was dead, long gone. But his great-great-great-granddaughters inherited his legacy, whether they wanted to or not. Even Desiree, who complained before every Founders Day picnic, who rolled her eyes whenever the founder was mentioned in school, as if none of that business had anything to do with her. This would stick after the twins disappeared. How Desiree never wanted to be part of the town that was her birthright. How she felt that you could flick away history, like shrugging a hand off your shoulder. You can escape a town, but you cannot escape blood. Somehow, the Veen twins believed themselves capable of both. And yet, if Alphonse de Sor could have strolled through the town he'd once imagined, he would have been thrilled by the sight of his great-great-great-granddaughters. Twin girls, creamy skin, hazel eyes, wavy hair. He would have marveled at them. For the child to be a little more perfect than the parents, what could be more wonderful than that? Stop there.
I imagine a whole room of people cheering for you. I mean, so that just says so much about history, about class, race, about the time period. I mean, just that sets the tone. And I was wondering when I was reading it, did you first imagine these sisters, these twins, or was it more the story you wanted to tell? Like, what was your way into the book?
Yeah, well, my way into the book was actually the town. And I knew I wanted to write about the town before I thought about the sisters or the characters. The town came from a conversation I had with my mother where she was telling me about a town that she remembered hearing about as a child growing up in Louisiana. And it was something that really struck me, this idea of a town full of people who sort of intermarried within their community so that their children would get lighter. It was so strange and really disturbing. And I thought, okay, this is the setting for a novel. Like this is a place that would be really interesting to think about a novel. Like, what is it like to live in this place? What's it like to leave this place? What is it like for the people who kind of fit into the standards of this place? And what is it like for the people who are very outside of those standards? So I kind of knew that was the place I wanted to write towards. And the ideas embedded in a place like that. And then after that, I started to think about twins as a vehicle to think about identity.
Yeah. I mean, if there's anything you're going to, fraught, you've got sisters, you've got family, you've got strong women, you've got twins. So did you do research on this actual place, or was it mostly from your mom's stories?
I did. I tried to look up the place. I couldn't find it on a map. And that's when it became really interesting to me. Because then it felt really fun to think about kind of being able to invent this place myself. So everything that I read that I just wrote, that was all stuff that I just came up with, thinking about the origins of this place and kind of creating a history of this place. But I did find similar towns to this one. I found other communities where I found, on JSTOR or some academic websites where I found kind of these historical texts or these sociological texts written about those places that were also these Creole communities that were very insular and very obsessed with skin color. So I was able to draw on some of those historical texts in kind of creating some of the ideologies around this town. But most of it just came from me kind of inventing it and writing in the direction of my mother's memory, which was more exciting to me than writing towards actual history.
Sure. Yeah, those stories must have been mesmerizing. And then was that something you'd sat with for a while, the stories in your head, because you wrote the mothers first? So was this something that had been, just percolating in there?
I think she told me, I remember I was still in grad school when she told me the stories. So it was something I found the note on my phone of when I had jotted it down. It was
really?
2014. And all I wrote was just something like very, very bare bones idea about the town. So it was an idea that I knew, something I was interested in, but I didn't have any of the characters yet. I didn't know, they really had no idea about the scale of the story and what the kind of scope that would take. Yeah. I really just was kind of interested in the idea of this very strange town. So it was in the gap between when I finished the mothers, but before the mothers came out, that was when I started to actually start writing this book.
Wow. Well, it's amazing. I mean, we get the book and we know that there's obviously a story behind the story, but just really imagining all of this. And then of course, now imagine the HBO's, and building this town and where are you, where is it going to be set and where will the set be and how will you bring in the characters and what will the grocery store look like, and that diner. Talk about the diner. There's a diner in this.
Yeah.
I just, again, I read it 7 months ago or something, but I just remember being really taken with that diner.
Yeah. Yeah. I had somebody ask me about the presence of diners or because there is a kind of gross restaurant in the mothers. And then there's this diner that plays a big role. I mean, I love restaurants. I guess it's a place where, it feels weird to say this now in quarantine, but they're useful because it's a place where people gather, right? It's a place where
I remember those days, Brit.
Yes, back in those days. So the idea of this diner, I love the diner, which you are introduced to immediately in the beginning of the book. That's where everyone is kind of gathered to hear this news. So I love the idea of the diner, a place where people gather, and also a place where Desiree eventually, when she returns, gets a job. Because it gave her something to do and a place in which people are gathering. And I don't know. I love a restaurant for that in a book. But I think to what you were saying, not to go too far into the HBO direction, but I think one of the things that I enjoyed talking about was just the locations in the book, because there are a lot of kind of distinct locations, even just within the time periods that they're set, the idea of early 80s New York or, late 70s LA. There's something about a lot of those locations that I think will be really fun to see on a screen.
Oh, yeah. Set clothing, hair, up, all that stuff. And so now you've got the twins who leave when they're 16. And I love their closeness. I mean, talk about Desiree and Stella, right? Is that right? Desiree and Stella as sisters, and just as they're just playful and so connected. I mean, they're twins. So right there, people are there's the twin thing. But, talk a little bit about each of their characters and how you were able to, because of the kind of people they were, have them go in their own directions, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big challenge of this book was the fact that the central relationship in the book, which is between Desiree and Stella, that central relationship is between two characters who spend 80% of the book apart. Yes. So part of my challenge in writing it was, how do I establish the closeness of this relationship when for most of the book you're not going to see them physically together? So part of that, I think, was trying to do some heavy lifting in the beginning of the book, and establishing both the closeness of this relationship, but also kind of the claustrophobic feeling of it. This sense of being so close to somebody and loving them and wanting to be with them, but also feeling so trapped by the closeness of that relationship and kind of wanting to go your own way. And, I thought of them in this kind of constant dance in that way of loving each other, being so inseparable, but also kind of resenting the closeness. And what does it do? What does it feel like to be caught in that relationship of kind of wanting to be away from somebody, but also thinking you can't live without them? So to me, that was one of the challenges, and I think of trying to establish that early, and also just to balance their personalities in a way that felt organic and not hokey, because I think sometimes we can do the twin thing where either twins are clones or where they're just polar opposites. So they,
good, yeah,
exactly. So I was trying to find some kind of in between of seeing the ways in which they are similar and the ways in which they overlap, but also seeing the ways in which they are different people.
Yeah, and the pain, I mean, of a child. Desiree comes back, Stella does not, and for the mother, I mean, talk about what it's like for their mom, and also other people in the town sort of maybe understanding where the sisters were at, because of just everybody sort of growing up with that deep sense of history, and also, I guess, really having a sense of looking inside, or maybe they wouldn't voice it, but they sort of understood, but then also reckoning that with being left.
Yeah.
One's being left.
Yeah. I mean, I think that note on sort of being abandoned is really important in the book. I think Desiree is certainly somebody who struggles with that, because Stella does abandon her when she leaves her in New Orleans. And she kind of struggles with that feeling of being left. But there's also their mother, like you said, who the twins leave when they run away. And Adele was an interesting character for me, I think, because she's experienced so much grief in her life. She's experienced so much loss. And I don't know, I felt moved thinking about the idea of her being in this house by herself all those years, and then her daughter returns, and having to kind of adjust to that in a new way, and being a character who's often quite difficult, but also does love Desiree and does like you see that, but she still is very difficult because she's set in the ways of Mallard, and she's unwilling to kind of relent from the values and the ideology that she has inherited, versus Desiree, who's able to break from it.
Right. And she does come back, and she comes back with a child and a whole bunch of other baggage. And so, and I know everybody's watching and thinking, where did the chat thing go? But Brit and I made an executive decision that we're going to put it back up. But if you have questions, you can see where it says ask a question, and I promise we will get them. We will get to them. Also visit BritBennett.com and find her on Facebook, like her page, follow her on Instagram and on Twitter, and share with your friends. Also, you can see below it says purchase The Vanishing Half here. And that goes to support bookshop.org, which supports the independent bookstores, all of them. And this event is supporting the Rhode Island Food Bank and Share Our Strength. So just a little mention, just a little break in our program to remind you about all of that. But we will get to the questions. We totally promise. And also the timing of this book. I mean, you knew, obviously, this is a topic that is fraught and is front and center and is, but if ever a book, if you could have said, when should this book come out? I think June 2nd.
Yeah.
I mean, what is this doing to encourage the conversations that are so vital, so necessary, pointing out that people, can diversify their reading a lot? I mean,
yeah.
What do you have to say to that? And of course, I'm looking at your friends' books behind you, which we'll later.
I don't know. I think I honestly feel I feel fortunate that the book has emerged in a time in which people want to have conversations about race and identity. But I also do feel there is something I think really sad about the context in which the book is coming out, and the idea of, that people are just now kind of flocking to read about race in the way that, my book is new, but there are a lot of these books that have been around for years and years and years. And, like the publishers cannot print them quickly enough because people all of a sudden just want them. So I do, I think there's something a little frustrating about that for me of people that suggest that people were not previously interested in engaging, so, and it's depressing to think that it took us watching, a man die for 10 minutes for people to want to learn about race and identity. But that being said, I think that there's something, I think there is something kind of unique about the role of fiction in this moment that's different maybe than a lot of the sort of anti-racist nonfiction books that people are reading. I just think it's, I hope that people engage with these books as works of art and not just sort of as teaching material.
No.
I hope that I enjoy when people say that this book made them think about identity differently or their family differently or history differently. I enjoy that, but I also just want people to feel something when they're reading the story and connect to the characters.
Well, yes, and yes. And like I said, while I was bombarding you with my messages, I mean, I just so deeply felt enmeshed in the town, in the struggle of the sisters, as finding out who they were, as their sense of shame, as their sense of history, longing, togetherness. One of them, Stella, becomes, I forget about the line about lying, where her daughter realizes her mother's been lying or something. Mm-hmm. Like living your life as, living such a lie and then having to constantly be vigilant about that. I mean, there were so many themes. I mean, this is, and, books really do open up a world of all books, discussion. I mean, that's what we hope with books. And, but yeah, I hear you, what you're saying about the, it's like, yeah, there are a lot of really good books and they've been out there, but like, I know it's really, it's one of those things where it's, we'll take it, I suppose, but on the other end, it's like, hello. Print them fast enough. I understand. And what do you what are your hopes for readers who, like, I guess you just said, but also the, what are your hopes for this family, after the pages are finished?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I don't know. I hope that everyone is able to find peace in some way. I think that that's something that all these characters are kind of searching for. A lot of people in this book have experienced some degree of trauma or some degree of violence, whether it's the twins witnessing this traumatic event in their childhood, or if it's Jude growing up in this place that teaches her to hate herself, or even Kennedy having this very strained relationship with her mother that she struggles to understand. So I think that I have a friend who described this book as, this whole family has running in their blood. And it's something that I had not thought about. But, it's true, whether it's Jude being an actual runner, or the twins running away from home, or even Kennedy kind of becoming this restless person, just kind of flitting all around the world. Yeah. So this idea of everyone kind of experiencing this trauma that they are running from. And I just want, I was hoping that that's what people would take away at the end of the book, that there is a moment to kind of just let that breath out, a moment to just, for the characters that you feel like, okay, they will land somewhere and they will be all right. And everything's not going to be perfect. And it's not that, we're one big happy family. It's not that, but just people finding this moment of peace.
Yeah, just really digging into that. I'm imagining now Riverhead quickly making a sneaker collection for the Vanish. Yeah. If ever there were a publisher that would do it.
I agree with that. I wouldn't put it past them.
It would be Riverhead. Yeah. And you talk about Kennedy and her mom and that relationship. And so when a person is hiding so much of themselves, there's that feeling of something is off, something is, you can't put your finger on it. But when there isn't, a full reveal, and is there ever, it's always a very tricky dance.
Yeah.
But she, it's also trusting your gut and knowing things off. But then it's like, how much can you dig, and you don't want to push away that central, relationship, because you're not getting it. But she tries to trip her mom up. And we also did decide, there were a lot of decisions around the Vanishing Half because it's the first book, and because it's just been such a really tumultuous time, I didn't want people to feel like, oh, we have to rush and read this, because if there's anything you don't want to rush, you don't want to rush. You have your book there too. I like to hold.
I do. Yeah, I do.
Okay, good. This is like get to hold them up together. Yours has the Book of the Month Club. And
yeah.
And mine has what does mine have? Oh, Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, I don't have it. I don't have one of those yet. I think I have Book of the Month. I have GMA, but I don't have a Barnes and Noble one yet.
Oh, somebody please get.
I think they're on. I was told they were at the warehouse. They had to like send them in shipments because of the another sort of COVID casualty was the warehouse. So hopefully it's coming soon.
Yeah, there have been a lot of COVID casualties.
Yeah.
And the publishers, I've had to explain that to a lot of the readers who have ordered books or waiting.
Yeah.
There's a whole different procedure there.
It is, yeah.
They have to be careful about how, So if you don't have your copy, nobody can badly
exactly.
that they don't have theirs. I know there's a lot of questions. We're going to start taking some questions.
Okay.
Well, maybe I just asked this one already. So I will skip it. One of the questions here is, can you talk about the weight of secrets in this book, how they impact things like relationships, character development, and structure of the story? Thank you. That was Pam.
Thank you. I think I am a writer who's interested in secrets. If you read my first book, which pivots on one. I think one thing that I think about as far as writing the book, that was advice that I got when I was in grad school, was that it was one of my professors who said, suspense, when you're writing, suspense is created by what you reveal, not by what you withhold. And that was something that really stuck with me, because I always thought that the key to good writing was like you have in your mind what the plot twist is, and you don't tell the reader, and then they get to it, and it's like your amazing moment. Right. And the professor was just like, no, you actually create more suspense when you tell the reader up front what's happening. Even if the characters don't know, the characters don't need to know. But when the reader knows, when the reader is kind of put in that superior position of knowing, it creates that sense of irony and suspense and tension. And you actually kind of generate more interest in the story than when you hold things back. So that was something that was really kind of life-changing for me as a writer, because, I think both of my books kind of begin similarly, where I just kind of put all my cards on the table. And, the mothers, you're told very early on, this girl got pregnant by her pastor's son and she had an abortion, and here's where we start. And then in this book, you begin, again, the section before what I read explains to you about Desiree and about Stella and what happened to each of them and their various paths. And that's where you begin. So I love putting that information up front for the reader. But I do love holding things back from various characters, because I think that that's where the story becomes really tense and suspenseful and engrossing. So with this, I wanted to think about the weight of Stella's secret on her life, the fact that this creates a world for her that makes her isolated and lonely. The idea, I had somebody describe Stella as a fugitive, and I think that is accurate to describe kind of how she is moving through the world, because she moves through the world with such paranoia and fear of being exposed. Right. And there's something really ironic about, she, in my mind, she passes, at least for a large part, because she wants to feel safe. But the idea of her choosing this life that is supposed to give her safety and spending all of her time in that life feeling hunted. Right. There's something that's so just ironic about that and interesting to kind of delve into. So I wanted to think about the weight of that secret on Stella, and then also on the lives of people around her. What is it to make this choice that necessitates that you will never be able to reveal your full self to the people that you care about the most in the world? So like, what's it like in her marriage if she can't tell her husband about 16 years of her life? And what's it like with her daughter if she has to hide all of these things that she's experienced growing up? And not only that, but also the ways in which she experiences the world differently, and that being inflected by her childhood, growing up in the Jim Crow South and experiencing this racialized violence. So I wanted to think about both of those things, of kind of the effect of Stella's secret on herself and also on those around her, and try to use that to kind of guide me through the story. But again, like, I think it would be a different book if the reader did not know Stella's secret at the beginning, right? I think that there is a pleasure that you get from reading it, because you're wondering what's going to happen. Is she going to
do this?
Exactly. Is she going to get caught? Like, those are questions that you have as a reader that you would not have had if I didn't tell you that right off.
Yeah, I have to say, as a reader, that's one of my favorite kinds of ways into a book. I like, because if I know all of that at the beginning, in the very beginning, you're in for quite a ride, because
exactly
all of this, what else is coming? So
exactly,
I like that. That's my kind of thing. Yes. Okay. Here we go. The jackets for both the mothers and the Vanishing Half are beautiful and distinctive. Can you tell us about the process art and art selection for these books? They're both stunning.
Thank you. I got very lucky. I think Riverhead has great art. I know that for the Vanishing Half, we liked the way in which it kind of recalls the cover of the mothers. They both have these. I don't have a copy of the mothers.
I wish I did.
I don't.
It's too far.
I don't at all. but they both kind of recall these sort of silhouettes of women's faces. They both are very colorful. So there's a way that they look nice, kind of put up against each other and sort of recall each other in this way that we liked. And I think, with the Vanishing Half, there's something very disturbing about the image, I find. I think there's a way in which you don't know kind of if these faces are merging together or if one is consuming the other. And there's a visual tension, I think, from these very bright primary colors that are not even particularly like nice colors, but the way that they look kind of put up against each other is really tense.
I
think it's pretty, but I also think it's tense. And even I think the title alongside the title, The Vanishing Half, which I think is kind of creepy. It's a little unsettling. You're like, what's disappearing? Right. So
which half?
Exactly. So I think that those things work together. So I'm really lucky that Riverhead Art Department is great. I think they're the best in the game. I'm glad to have two great covers.
It is, they are two huge winners. Brit, this book is phenomenal. Reading it to recommend for our library's book club. Congratulations on HBO. With all the talk of diverse casting, will you have a say on the actors? Also, what are you working on next?
I am able to consult. I do not have final approval, but. Not yet, but I am really excited for the possibility of what this will be, of just this, this Black American story. The idea that it's a historical, it's a period piece, but it's not about, heroes. It's not about martyrs. It's just about regular people just kind of doing their best and trying to figure things out. So I am excited to see what happens with that. There have been no names floated around that I can share yet, but I'm really excited. I think that there'll be, I hope that there'll be a lot of actors interested in being a part of this, and I'm excited to see what it's going to look like. As far as the second question, I'm working on a third novel right now. It's still very, very, very early. And it's about singers who have a feud. So it's a novel about music, which has been really fun to write, and just listening to music as I'm writing it. So it's been really fun. I haven't been able to work on it this month because of life. Really? So
all right, been a little busy, Brit.
Been a little bit busy, so I'm excited to get back to it as soon as I can.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you've written this book, it's been out of your hands and ready to roll, and all of that, you've got that time period, and then you're working, and then when the book comes out, and it came out June 2nd, so it's been 4 weeks tomorrow.
Yeah.
Got all of that going on, and all of the excitement, and all of the the news on the other end of it. So I can imagine where it's like your head is now here. Do you ever forget? Like, does it ever come up? You've done a lot of interviews where you haven't read. I don't know if you've reread it, but do you ever go like, oh wait, what did does anyone?
Yeah.
And where you're like, I don't know.
There have been a few moments where I have not remembered plot points. So I haven't reread it since copy edits, that was the last time I reread it. I don't think I've read it since we had like actual finished copies or anything like that. Right. So, and I think also because, even when you're touring, and you're reading from the book every night, you're reading more of the book and you're kind of thinking, But when you're doing virtual events, I very rarely read. If I read just like a tiny amount, like I just did. So, so it's not the same of like engaging with the text. So yeah, I've had a few moments of people asking me about characters who I did not remember, or just plot points that I kind of forgot. So yeah, it feels, you know,
like
it feels pretty strange.
Like somebody's telling you about your book, and then also readers have such an intense way. Like I said, I don't have them here, but I took a lot of really big notes.
Yeah.
What I loved was about there was something that you had written about lying, lying as an act of love, which I loved. That was I think it was probably Kennedy and Stella. I don't know. There was something about it I really liked.
That sounds right.
I guess I like that. Yeah, that lying isn't always a bad thing. Maybe that's what it is. Well, I think I did kind of ask this. What is, Anise asked, what is the most important thing that you want readers to take with them after reading the book?
Yeah. I think we talked about that a little bit, but I think, I just want people, I think it's been really gratifying to hear, you know, as much as I've enjoyed people saying that the book made them think differently about identity. I also just love the people who are like, I haven't been able to read in quarantine. This is the first thing I've focused on, you know, because that's real. People who are just like, I read this in 24 hours. I tore through it, you know. A lot of people have been like, I ignored my family to read this book. You know, I enjoy hearing that because I know for myself it was a struggle to start reading in quarantine, to finish anything and to focus on anything. So people who've been able to focus on reading this book in quarantine, I think that's kind of the height of compliments right now.
I would say that is a huge compliment. It's true. I mean, now we're, you know, 3.5 months into it, but for a long time I wasn't. And, you know, because it was talk about books, it is an interesting place to find yourself in. And when you're, you know, friends and so many people are writers and readers and not being able to do that. But yeah, this is a great book for, if you can't sit down and stuff, The Vanishing Half, will have you glued to the pages. Yeah. I said, when I read it back in the day when we could go out and do other things, but yet chose to sit and just read. Somebody wants to know when things are a little bit more lifted, what's the first bookstore you'd like to go visit?
Oh, that's a really nice question. You know, I don't know. I mean, I love Greenlight Bookstore. I love Books Are Magic. I was asked recently about the last bookstore I visited and had like such a like nostalgic, sad memory. It was because it was such a nice day. I went to go see Portrait of a Lady on Fire with 2 of my friends. And then afterwards we went to this new McNally Jackson that had just opened kind of near us. And I remember at the time, like it was packed. And I remember walking around the bookstore with my friends and thinking, oh, I can't wait to come here all the time. It's so close. It just opened. I had been waiting for that bookstore to open for months and was so excited about the convenience of it. And of course, have never been back since. So
I didn't know the new one. They opened a new one. They opened
it. It's, God, I forgot what, it's like at a mall in Brooklyn. And it just, and I remember I kept walking by because I would go to like Target and do other things in the shopping center. I would walk by and be like, when are they going to open it? When are they going to open it? And literally, like, it was like my last weekend in civilization when we went to the McNally Jackson. And I just thought, oh, this is so amazing. I'll come here all the time when I go to Target and get groceries or whatever. And then, of course, that was.
I know. It's amazing the things we took for granted. Like, oh, I'll be right back. Oh,
yeah.
No, it's a bizarre thing. I didn't even realize they had opened another one.
Yeah.
Somebody asked about Mallard, and you talked about that in the beginning, about the that you modeled it after. So we talked about that. We got the idea for the story. Somebody said your story reminds me a little bit about a short story by Langston Hughes called Passing. Are you familiar with this story?
I am. I've read it a long time ago. But, you know, I can maybe speak a little bit to kind of some of the literature Passing that, you know, I think I was always really interested in the kind of literary tradition of Passing. I think, you know, thinking about Nella Larson's Passing, which I recently reread, and I think it holds up really well. I think it feels like, it actually feels really, I don't know, there's something so modern about it. I don't know exactly what it is about the book, but And also fun to read in quarantine of like they're going to all these like amazing parties in Harlem, and there's a lot of really fun parties in that book. So good quarantine book. But I think there's something really complicated about that book because like when these characters meet, it's about these two childhood friends, one who passes for white, one who does not. They meet when they're adults in Chicago one day, and the one who's passed, she's not like Stella because she like kind of loves the idea of sort of flirting with getting caught. So she shows up to these parties in Harlem knowing that it's dangerous for her to do so, but like loving the danger of this game that she's playing versus her friend who's very kind of measured and careful is like freaking out the whole time. But there's something that feels so like modern electric. I think that's supposed to be adapted into a movie, I think with Tessa Thompson. It's supposed to be coming out. So that's exciting and that'll be exciting to see. But I think about that. I think about the movie Imitation of Life, which was a movie that I saw when I was a kid. And I was
seeing that as you are a kid, Brit. You're a kid. You're a kid. I remember it was like the $1 Million Movie or the After School. I remember whatever it was.
Yeah. I remember my mom. Well, my mom was the one who like made me watch it.
I just was heartbroken.
Very sad, and also like it was. I also rewatched that. This was before quarantine, but I was writing something about it for the Barnes and Noble edition. I wrote like a little essay about it. And it struck me because that's the only thing I remember about that movie was this white passing character. It's so strange rewatching the movie because that was really like the B plot of the story. Like there's the whole A plot about, the woman who becomes like an entrepreneur and like, that's the A plot. I think in that version, she's an actor. That's the A plot of the story, but nobody ever talks about that when they talk about Imitation of Life. You talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See her mom and
the dramatic funeral scene, that really epic funeral scene. But that was the first kind of literature that I saw about passing when I was, I don't know, in elementary school or something. And it was something that I had never thought about somebody doing. I didn't know it was a thing that you could do, just sort of disown your family and create this new life for yourself. So I was aware of sort of literature passing. I wanted to write kind of toward that tradition, but I wanted to write at it from a 21st century perspective, which, I think is a little bit more acknowledging of the idea of just multiculturalism and the idea that race is not a binary and gender is not a binary and all of these spaces being more fluid and more unstable and more permeable than I think maybe previous sort of generations kind of allowed. So that was something that I was thinking of when I was working on the book was how can we write about identity in a way that acknowledges its fluidity and doesn't just see it as these sort of static categories.
You hit every point. Like you literally hit everything. I mean, there is something for there are so many things to discuss and really think about. And it's just an unputdownable, entertaining, just what a place to just hang out.
Thank you.
The Vanishing Half. How do recent events and protests on diversity and equality affect your message in the book? Just questions.
Yeah. I don't know if it affects it, but I think really, I think it's strange to see that this book discusses timely, because again, I started writing it years ago, and also it takes place 50 years ago. So there's something strange about that, but I think that really what feels like what changed was kind of the national conversation. It wasn't that race changed or racist violence changed or there was an uptick. These things have always been happening. But now I think there is probably also an aspect of quarantine of people being inside and at home and forced to watch these images looping and looping and looping. Mm-hmm. It's harder to look away, you can't go anywhere. So I think there is an aspect of that too that has changed the conversation. But like I said, again, I hope that, people continue to engage with these stories after the national conversation moves on and as we move on to other sort of topics. I hope people continue to want to read stories about, different types of people. I think that's something that is always just fun and exciting to read about people who are different than yourself.
I'm hopeful. It sounds like the publishing industry really got the message and are making real changes now. It feels like they're not just talking about it. It feels like there's, I hope, so
I
that
hope, yeah.
more and more books and
Yeah.
we're trying to highlight them. So I'm hopeful. Somebody had a random question. They love your headphones. Your headphones.
They are Beats by Dre.
I knew they were Beats.
Yes, they're Beats.
Very cool.
Yes, they're Beats. I love them. I've had these headphones for so many years.
They're very cool.
Very heavy on the bass if you like music that's heavy with bass.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That was a great question. And a question here, do you relate more to Stella or Desiree?
Honestly, to Stella, and people are usually kind of surprised when I say that. But I think that Stella, she's more introverted, she's more guarded, she's more private. That's definitely more like me. But I think the thing that I think I have in common with Desiree is well, yeah, I would say this is true. I think Desiree is, she's very loyal to her family. And that's certainly how I feel about my family. So I think that's maybe the Desiree in me, is that kind of loyalty and care towards family. But Stella is definitely, there's this idea of her always kind of being wrapped up in herself. I think that that's something that I feel is true of me. So the difficulty of writing Stella, I think, is that while I felt like she was more similar to me personality-wise, she also makes choices in the book that I could never imagine myself making. I have two older sisters, and I kept writing the book trying to think, like, what would it take for me to decide to never speak to them again? And it's so unthinkable for me. So I think there was something very dissonant about writing a character who's kind of like you, but also does things that you would never do. There's something difficult, I think, in the tension of trying to write a character like that. But I found it really fun and really interesting.
Did you ask your sisters what you would have to do? Did you?
I did not ask them that. I'm sure they have some ideas.
I have two sisters also, so I love everything. And I can't imagine what it would be. So that's a really great question.
Yeah.
Pam would like to know which authors have influenced you.
A lot of different ones. I think the biggest two for me are Toni Morrison and James Baldwin, who I think are very easy guesses. I don't think that's shocking. They're such great writers and writers who write so beautifully. And I also really love Dorothy Allison. I think that been desperately waiting for another novel by her for years. I love her work. I think her work is really beautiful. It's really brutal and really beautiful. And I love Jesmyn Ward also. I think that she's one of our greatest living American authors. Probably greatest living authors, period, to be honest. She's incredible. And I also really love Maggie Nelson. I think that her writing does that kind of funny, heartbreaking, like it's funny, you're laughing, and then it kind of kicks you in the gut. She does that. She straddles that line so carefully and so precisely, and also has really smart and interesting ideas about identity and gender and sexuality and all these things in her work. So I love her too.
I'm writing her down because everybody else I know, but I don't like to miss any good books. And Pam's also asking you to mention a few titles which you have behind you.
Oh yeah. So okay, I will plug. So please. One of the so this kind of goldenrod book is called The Gimmicks by Chris McCormick. He's one of my best friends. Went to grad school together. We were in every single workshop together. And he also read early drafts of The Vanishing Half and gave me notes. I gave him notes on The Gimmick. So we are each other's kind of early readers. And it's a story about this Armenian professional wrestler who disappears. And it's about his former manager trying to search for him. And you find out, there's all of these sort of characters that he knew, this girl he was in love with back in Armenia, and his cousin who kind of becomes this revolutionary / terrorist. It's this really huge kind of globetrotting epic story about justice and sort of choices that we make and the sort of possibility of getting justice for having been wronged. It's really beautiful. It's really ambitious. And it's a great book. It came out in January. So that's one. The other one up top is The Dragons, the Giant, and the Women by Wayetu Moore, who's another good friend of mine. It's a memoir that just came out we had the same pub day. and it's about her experience surviving the Liberian Civil War, and kind of her family was rescued by this rebel woman soldier, and she never was able to understand why this woman decided to help her family. So part of the book is her trying to go back and kind of find this woman and piece together why this happened. So that's a great book. It's also does some really interesting and like audacious things formally that I really enjoyed. So that's one, and a few others that I loved. I loved the book Actress by Anne Enright, which is about the daughter of an Irish stage legend. And it's a really beautiful book. It's a complicated mother-daughter relationship, and a book about legacy and fame and celebrity. And then the first book I finished in quarantine was The Glass Hotel. So,
I started it. I did not finish it for any reason, but it was one of the books I started when I just could not read.
Yeah, it found me at the right time, I think. I was finally able to kind of focus. But yeah, it's about a Ponzi scheme, and it was so propulsive. And also a book where there are lots of different locations geographically, which was nice to read. Nice. To read about people being on like yachts and parties, and you're in New York. Okay, now we're in Europe somewhere, and that it's another globetrotting book. I think all of these are globetrotting books that I just suggested. But
yeah, there's a real need for that, right?
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, really, I would recommend those.
Are there any TV series or any of the Netflix, Hulu, any of that stuff that you've been enjoying?
I started Little Fires Everywhere yesterday. I'm very late.
I saw you.
Yeah, I was chronicling it on my Instagram stories. Yeah, I was very late to watching it, but I am really enjoying that. I read the book. I don't remember the plot points that specifically, so I'm still very surprised when things are happening. But I'm enjoying it. It's just a really enjoyable show. It was very well cast.
But it goes fast. I think there only
that's probably true.
Yeah, nobody warned me about this, Brit. So
and
I read the book so long ago that I didn't really remember. So I just like watched it as a series.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait a minute, it's over now.
Yeah.
I really did enjoy it. So
yeah, I enjoyed that. I was watching Westworld, which was that was the first show I started watching in quarantine, which again, transportive and dystopian, which felt right.
Yeah.
It felt like the right mood. Like you're looking at these sort of beautiful visuals, and then just horrible things are happening. So there was something about that was very immersive in the beginning of quarantine. So I did find that really interesting. I'm not much of a sci-fi person myself, usually. But there was something about the dystopia that just felt right in that moment. But I've been honestly rewatching a lot of just kind of comfort TV shows.
Yes, the comfort.
I've been watching Parks and Rec. I've been watching New Girl. I've been watching Schitt's Creek. Just shows that are gonna make you laugh and smile and feel good.
Yeah, no, I think there is a sense of comfort everything. Janet would like to know, did you like Portrait of a Lady on Fire? I think you mentioned that, didn't you?
I loved Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Yeah,
I'm actually really happy that it was the last movie I saw, and God knows the next time I'm going to be in a movie theater.
Right?
But it's such a beautiful love story. It's streaming on Hulu if anybody wants to watch it. It's such a beautiful love story, and it's also, in addition to being a love story, it's also a really incredible story about just women and art and ambition and genius and the kind of relationship between the artist and the muse. It complicates that because that's traditionally such a gendered dynamic, the male artist and the woman who's the muse. And because these are both women who are alternatively artists and alternatively muse, it complicates it in this really fascinating way. So I'm sad that I don't know when I will next be in a movie theater, because I love going to the movies. It's my favorite thing to do. But I'm glad that my last experience was a really good one, and you guys should watch that movie.
That is good. I know. What does happen with the movies? Are they're being released on I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, there's so many things I don't know.
I know.
This was just so much fun, and I will remind everybody you can purchase the book here or at any of your favorite bookstores online. But you do not. I mean, I can't say enough that you are going to just beyond love this book. Everybody has, and you will too. And you can go to BritBennett.com for more information. Follow her and find her on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Do you have a newsletter? I don't know. For people,
I don't have a newsletter now.
She's going to be writing a newsletter. but follow her news and keep, and we'll be sharing it here as well. And also, if you go on top and you see a little green button, it says follow Robin Call, follow me on Crowdcast, and then you will know everything that we have going on. But like, this has been such a joy to share with the readers. I will continue to be doing it. I know that some people wanted to have spoilers and talk, so maybe we'll do a book club meetup at the end of the summer. We won't bother you because you're going to be busy listening to music. What kind of music are you listening to? We won't ask about the book, but just give us like one song that's rolling around in your head.
Well, I also post this on Instagram, but Jessie Ware has a new album called What's Your Pleasure that is amazing.
Okay.
It's just like, it's basically like sophisticated sensual disco. It's like every track is a dance track.
Oh, cool.
And it's so pleasing. You guys have to listen to it from start to finish. It's great. So I love her, and that's something that you should check out.
So go to Brit Bennett on Instagram and just follow what she's doing, and then you won't miss any of the cool stuff. I want to thank everybody so much, and I will be back at 8:15 with Chris Castellani and Leading Men. And there are some like connections between these books in an interesting way too. So I'm going to say goodbye to Brit, and thank you, audience, for watching. Brit, congratulations on all of this success, and look forward to watching you and leaving you more messages. And awesome, and
thank you.
Everybody, so you can see the messages. Thanking you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the early support from you, Robin, and thank you everybody for watching and for supporting the book. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. When I love something, I love something. It's Brit Bennett's The Vanishing Half. And make sure she gets a copy from Barnes & Noble. Thank you so much, Brit. Thank you for watching.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Bye.